For me, Obi, there was a few things. One, from our industry side, there was a plea that was made by the Newtown families, and I think this will gain traction. I was talking with Andrew about this before, and I think Dominic can chime in from the media side, which is they don't want any more, and there'll be more mass shootings in this country. And the commonality is a lot of these folks, like we learned in the report from Lanza today, he kept track of mass murders. He saw what happened in Columbine, in Aurora, and other places. And he aspired for that. And he aspired for the notoriety that went along with it. The families have asked, in an informal way, the media, to no longer publicize and give names to the shooters, because in a lot of ways you're giving them what they want. We're going to try and do that going forward. On this program, I think a lot of other media will as well. But when you look at why did he have an assault weapon?
Well, I think
you see the guns in his room, and you just say, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of fault that lies in a lot of different places, but why at the end of the day was Mom able to walk out and put in the kid's room an assault weapon that you'd find on the battlefields in Asia? I mean, why did he have that in the room?
Whether it was a shotgun or assault weapon, it's all the same question really comes to mind. First off, one, mental health in this country and what we do about it. Two, was that mother, was she, as loving as she was, hopefully, was love blind, or was she in denial? I mean, anybody who has children or is around children, my friends' kids, we hang around and stuff, I'm careful about leaving knives on the table, different things based upon
for the sake of
young
brevity,
kids
for the
grabbing
sake of
them.
brevity for this, because I want to talk about other things. But with all due respect, the mom's completely screwed up. To buy the kid a gun safe and then to load it and then to have thousands of rounds of ammunition and to have this kind of a conversation. Did I live in her shoes? No, but at the end of the day, you have a very troubled person. The last thing you want to do is really arm the person, okay? So let's not waste time on
That's what I'm saying, though.
But if we
that's
think
my
for
point.
a second that his mental treatment was the sole issue at play here,
well, I'm not
we're
saying
living
it's
in a
but
dream world.
the first line of defense is somebody's family. And if the men and women around them and the kids that see somebody else in the playground at times aren't paying attention to what's going on, that's the first line of defense. Secondly, you talk about response time. What stopped the last tragedy we had in Colorado? An armed guard on
please don't give me that. With all due respect, I'm tired,
but
man.
That's
the idea. Okay, Ron, you're in a classroom. Do you want your teachers to have guns on their waistbands?
That's the biggest crock of crap. Of
Thank
course
you very much. The lunch
but
lady
there
packing
was a
heat.
trained armed security guard that came down the hall, and then the gentleman put a bullet in his head.
Excuse me.
He killed himself.
Go ahead, Ron.
In Columbine, the first one, there was an armed guard in the school. Did it stop anything? No. President Reagan was surrounded by armed guards. Did it stop him from getting shot? John Kennedy was killed. Did it stop him from getting shot? Stop that.
And what
a
was the
school
mental health
is a
of
school
those
is a
gentlemen
school.
that committed those crimes?
With
What
all
was their
due
mental health?
respect, we're not really seriously talking about creating, basically, the green zones in our schools. We're going to have armed guards in there already. I mean, you think we got problems now having teachers? Any of you, by the way, all due respect, you ever have a homeroom teacher that you really wouldn't have felt too comfortable if they had a sidearm strapped to them? Please, thank you very much, okay? And you want to have an environment where you got everybody tense?
I had rulers. I had teachers with rulers back then.
Rich, one quick thing. The National Organization for Police Chiefs in the country are against, guns in the home, because who gets shot? Not the burglar, but we use them on ourselves. So now we're going to give them to teachers where not just a father and son and daughter are at home.
I hear the argument about guards, I hear mental health, I hear all these things, and they all have some validity, but it's anything to talk about. Let's talk about anything but guns. Let's talk about anything but reducing the number of guns or restricting access to guns. It honestly feels like a little bit of...
And Andrew, that's a perfect segue, and I'll let you start with this one, because as I mentioned off the top, it is often the Newtowns, the Columbines, the Auroras, and for good reason. It captivates the consciousness of this country, the mass shootings, and it gets the most attention. But the victims in those attacks, they represent a tiny, tiny fraction of the total body count at the end of the day. More than 30,000 people in this country die at the end of a gun. Now, the proof is as close as the other headlines. Louisiana, deadly rampage in the town of Lockport. Man killed 3 people and himself injured 3 others. Victims, all members of his own family or from a former marriage, as well as former boss and wife. No word yet on motive. Holiday gun violence. Mission Valley, California, woman shot in the head and killed, another man in critical condition after a Christmas Eve attack in a parking lot of a mall. And of course, we mentioned off the top, in Newark, holiday violence, there were 2 teens. I mean, I'm talking 13 and 15-year-old children here. Children dead, 2 of them, and another one injured on Christmas night. The teens, turns out, not the intended targets. I can keep going on here. There was the night before Christmas Eve, a connected incident. 3 people shot dead at a club in Irvington, just a few blocks away from the Christmas night killings. Now, people in Newark, they say they have had enough.
This is wrong. She's 13. We need for our governor, he reached out once, but we need that to be on a continued basis.
No one came through. Why wasn't any police coming through here? Now you got 3 innocent kids that got shot, and there's no one around to do anything. And here we got to bury our children.
All right, Andrew. Due respect, I did a story. You were with me at this table 6, 7, 8 months ago. I forget the timeline. Same city, different kids, same tragic, senseless violence. They were mad at then Mayor Booker for what was going on in the streets of Newark. We'll have the same dateline, tragically, 6 months from now. Okay?
You can pick any day. I mean, not about Newark, but you can pick any day. And we've done this before. We've just randomly looked for gun violence incidents because we wanted, there was some other issue related to guns that was in the news that day.
But I guess my question to you is, we had a guest on, I thought it was interesting. They worked in developing countries around the world, and they treated epidemics, this group. And after 20 years of professional life, he was exhausted by this to deal with the malarias and all the other things. So he comes back, and it was in Chicago, and he said, my gosh, wait a second. The way they look at epidemics is they put a map down of the area, and they look at the concentrations of where the illness is and et cetera. And he traced the gun violence in pockets of Chicago. He says, there's epidemics here. And he said, why don't we treat it as an epidemic? Now, conversely, Dominic and guys at the table for the last year, look what happened with gay marriage. If I told you 5 years ago, right, that it'd be politically dangerous for a Republican in a state like a Utah or a New Mexico to talk against the idea of gay marriage, you would have put me in a loony bin. Now, this issue with such velocity has gotten to the point where clearly people 30 and under in this country, they're going to make this thing the mainstream issue. Why has guns not moved at all? And I take the issue of Newark. Why hasn't this resonated into real change?
Well, I'm not sure how much local municipalities can do in and on their own. And that's one of the points that Mayor Bloomberg has been making for years, is that it's not, New York police can do what they can, Newark police can do what they can, but it also interstate transfer of guns from gun shows and illegal gun sales, illegal guns flowing into the big cities. You're going to have more in big cities because you have more people in big cities. But it's, if you had 30,000 people dying from an illness, people would be calling for vaccines. If you had 30,000 people a year dying from from a certain car defect, you'd have people calling for recalls. Any other thing, and you'd be looking at the cause of it, as opposed to ways to prevent the violence, ways to mitigate the damage. We don't do that with guns. I think it's because
We did that in New
You
York
guys,
State
wait,
first.
let
They got thrown on the
me
street.
just say this one thing. You guys may strongly disagree with me on this, starting with you, Richard. And certainly I know our esteemed educator will disagree. But let's take Newark for a second. No more guns. Do you think you're going to stop the murders in Newark? That
I think
community,
they go
that
down.
community we just saw?
I think
Do
they
you,
go down.
what do you
because,
say-
wait, let me just finish my point.
Yeah, sure.
This, Richard, I'm going to say it as a man of color. This is also an issue of family values. It's not just guns. It's, yes, guns. If they didn't have guns, they couldn't kill each other. But we have got to start with the male back in the household, particularly in the black family. I can say this as someone who grew up without a man in my life. And we've got to turn this around. Go ahead, Professor.
But if you say no guns, just finish that off. The criminals will turn them in. The law will not turn them in. The law-abiding citizens will. Therefore, criminals will still commit crimes with their weapons.
But I just want to push to Richard's point. Why haven't we done anything? It's not like we're just talking this since Newtown. We've been talking this for years, and nothing's been done. I think 2 things. We tell the lie about what our history really is, and we do not read the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, we've got to uphold the Constitution. If you disarm us, we'll be like Germany. We will be like Hitler. Go back and read the Second Amendment, especially the people on the right who are the gun nuts. You've got it? Guess what 2 words they leave out? A well-regulated militia. by well regulation, we mean having federal laws against it. And why do we keep having so many guns? Because our do-nothing Congress, and yes, a certain part of it, your side, will not allow anything to go through. So there's very little local governments can do because the federal government
When they
trumps what
passed the assault
happens.
weapons ban last time,
We can't even get a banana
Democrats
clip
will
through.
tell you that it was just a bunch of hooey. They will tell you it was all about what things looked like. It was not about
I'm a
anything
big boy.
real.
I'm a big
it was
boy.
a bumper sticker.
Hold on, and give me your. I'm a big boy. I know we're not going to solve the problem at the table, but I'd like a rational person, and I consider you that, to explain to me why. If when my kid's of age, he, they're going to go and they're going to get a car. They don't just go on a lot and nobody checks. You got to pass a written test. You got to prove that you're not a lunatic in the car, that you can actually hit a brake and hit the gas pedal at the right times. You got to parallel park. Why is it too much to ask? I'm not even talking the type of guns right now, but that you have a proven basic competency and that we do a check on you to see that you're not a schizophrenic, that you're not a felon, that you're not, somebody who's got a order of protection against you. Why don't we make it not hard, but just basic like other stuff? And why doesn't the gun owners, more than me, saying, damn Skippy, that's what we ought to do because I'm a law-abiding guy and I want to do it the right way. I want to have everybody else follow suit. I'm not asking for the moon here.
But let's take a look at what you're talking about for a second. Any of those things you're talking about would not have stopped the gun violence in Newtown. Because
No.
the mother was the one who was purchasing them, and the son was the one who had access. So it was not going to do anything.
Okay, let's
So
assume,
let's talk
let's
about.
assume it won't. Let's assume it won't do anything.
For-
Why not at least make it a little more
Well,
difficult?
the two things.
Why not
number
make it
one-
a little
number
more
one,
difficult?
We have the right. Okay. Number
See,
two.
but
the
this
number-
is the
and that's
problem. The
number
NRA
two-
is
I got
not
another
gonna give
problem.
in.
I got another problem. I got to go to a
Number
break, right? The other thing is, you got to still explain to me in the break, though, how 90% of Americans want a universal background check, but we in Congress can't give it to them. You'll give me that explanation when we come back. All right. The unanimity at the table continues. When we come back, we talk about Common Core here. Our guest tonight will definitely tell us why he's not a fan of it, but we'll talk about what to do if that's not the answer to fix our school systems. We'll be right back with more on that after this.